Welcome to the third video for Form 5 Biology. Let's study biology together. To receive notification of new biology videos, please click the subscribe button and hit the bell below to subscribe. This video is the second video after locomotion in man. We are going to study locomotion in the earthworm. Along with it, we will learn the technique of answering essay questions, as we have done with the first video for locomotion in man. And there will be a model answer given too for this question. We have already studied locomotion in man, and now we will continue with locomotion in the humble earthworm. The earthworm has a hydrostatic skeleton, meaning a skeleton that consists of fluid in a cavity, and the cavity is surrounded by a muscular body wall. So hydro means water, static means it doesn't move. But actually there is some movement in the fluid when the muscles contract. Let's have a look at the diagram on the right. This shows the cross-section of the earthworm's body, and the first layer, outermost layer, is called the epidermis. Beneath that we see the first muscle called the circular muscles. The circular muscles run around the body like this. All along the earthworm's body we have these circular muscles arranged in a circular pattern. Then we have the longitudinal muscles, which are arranged lengthwise along the body of the organism. So this is the second layer of muscles. After that is the fluid-filled body cavity, and then the intestines are found in the center. Apart from that, there are chetae, which are hard bristles or hair on the bottom part of the earthworm's body. The chetae help to act like brakes. When they grip the ground, when they are protruded and grip the ground, they will stop the movement of the earthworm. But when they are retracted, the earthworm is able to move forward. Let's make a comparison of the circular muscles and the longitudinal muscles in the earthworm. The circular muscle runs around each segment, okay, like this. But the longitudinal muscles runs along the length of the body of the earthworm, from the head to the tail, or from the anterior to the posterior end, lengthwise. Secondly, when circular muscles contract, it will squeeze the segments. Alright, so imagine that the circular muscle is contracting and becoming smaller and smaller. So it will squeeze the fluid in the center of the body here, and the fluid will move forward. Let's say it's going this way. The head is here, let's say, the head is here. So it will move this way, and the body will extend forward. At the same time, it will become longer and thinner, right? These arrows show the pressure on the fluid as the muscle is contracting. However, for longitudinal muscles, when they contract, it will pull the segments together. Okay, let's say this is the posterior end and this is the anterior end, the head. So when the longitudinal muscles contract, this part to this part, the length will shorten like this. And when it shortens, the fluid will have little space to move, but it will cause the body to become shorter and thicker instead. Okay, imagine these two parts are contracting, so the length will become shorter. Alright, but in that process, the whole body of the earthworm has to become thicker, shorter and thicker. We will now use a table to compare the actions of the two antagonistic muscles, that is the circular muscles and the longitudinal muscles. To move forward, at the anterior end here, firstly, the worm has to retract its setae so that it can move forward. So it pulls back its setae and then starts to contract its circular muscles. So from the original position, as it contracts the circular muscles, the segments will be made longer and thinner because the circular muscles will squeeze the fluid in the cavity and the fluid will move forward. So the segments become longer and thinner and they will extend forward. The segments will extend forward here in the front. But only the circular muscles at the front are contracting. So now the earthworm has moved forward, and see in this picture too, the same picture. The next thing it does, again at the anterior end, is to let the longitudinal muscles contract while the circular muscles relax. So if the circular muscles contract, longitudinal muscles will relax. And the reverse occurs if longitudinal muscles contract, circular muscles will relax instead. So when these longitudinal muscles contract, the segments will become shorter because the muscles, the longitudinal muscles, will pull the segments here in front to the front as it shortens the segments. And the segments will shorten and also thicken at the anterior end. But the rest of the body is not exactly moving, except here. Here the circular muscles have begun to contract also simultaneously as the longitudinal muscles contract in the front. But never mind, we won't worry about this part, just the front part. So after the segments have shortened, then it's time to protrude, let the setae protrude or jut out to grip the ground so that the head does not move anymore, because it's time for the other parts of the body to move forward. So the movement of the other parts of the body will occur in stages too, like the head. So after this part, the head has moved to the front, then it's time again to repeat the cycle. Circular muscles will contract, followed by contraction of longitudinal muscles. So it will repeat down the body of the earthworm, maybe in a few stages. So as this is occurring, the circular muscles and longitudinal muscles will contract alternately throughout the whole body. Then a peristaltic wave is produced along the body. We will see a wave of movement along the body. Okay, and this will cause the earthworm to move forward. So that's it. So you have to explain these two parts, but please explain in a paragraph, in 2 paragraphs, and do not use a table unless you are asked to make a comparison. So here again is a question that's similar to the first one. Based on the diagram below, explain how an earthworm is adapted for movement in its habitat. 10 marks. So it's almost the same question, except that now man is replaced with earthworm. Right, so looking at the picture, now when the question says based on the diagram below or at the side, you must be careful. Whatever you see here, you must explain, and don't just explain based on the notes that you have memorized, right? So here A shows you this first part where the circular muscles contract and extend the body of the earthworm. And B shows you this part here where there is contraction of longitudinal muscles. So let's see how the answer is given or answered. So let's look at how we can answer this question to get 10 marks. Firstly, we can state the type of skeleton that it has. It's a hydrostatic skeleton, and elaborate on it by mentioning that it's a body cavity filled with fluid and surrounded by a muscular wall. And here for the earthworm, it does not have tissues like the tendons, ligaments, and cartilage. So we can talk more of the locomotion instead. So the locomotion, the way that it moves is by crawling on the ground. Then mention the antagonistic muscles. Whenever you explain locomotion, you must always mention what the antagonistic muscles are. In this case, they are the circular muscles which go around each segment and the longitudinal muscles arranged along the length of the whole body. You can also elaborate that antagonistic muscles work in opposite ways. When one contracts, the other will relax. Give the definition. Okay, you may be able to get one more mark. So for this next part, where we explain the mechanism of crawling, let's test ourselves to see whether we can come up with the right keywords. To move forward, referring to A, diagram A is shown here, and we must mention that A is the picture referred to. Okay, must mention to referring to A. At the anterior end or front end, the worm does what to the kite? It will retract or pull back the kite. Next, which muscle must contract? For the worm to extend forward, circular muscles will contract and longitudinal muscles will relax. Next, what happens to the segments in the front here? They become thinner and longer, and this causes the earthworm to extend forward. So this must be mentioned. Segments become thinner and longer and the earthworm extends forward. Next, for B, the second diagram, the opposite occurs, that is, which muscles will contract here? Longitudinal muscles contract instead and circular muscles relax. The segments will become shorter and thicker. You can see it's thicker than at the beginning here. Now the kite will protrude to anchor the earthworm to the ground. You can mention that, so that the other parts here can undergo the same process to help the earthworm to move forward here only. But the front end doesn't move at all already. You wait for a while until the rest of the body moves forward to join this part. Next, circular muscles and longitudinal muscles contract in what manner? Alternately. So that what wave is produced? Peristaltic wave is produced along the body, which causes the earthworm to move forward. So that's the answer. There are more than enough points to get 10 marks. And this is a model answer given for this essay question. Based on an analysis of the past year's questions paper for SPM, it was found that this topic on locomotion in organisms has not been extensively tested. So it is good to know it in detail for the long questions like structured question and essay questions. Of course, actually it's better to know everything in detail if you can do it. Only fish has been tested in the structured question. You should memorize locomotion in man, worm, fish, bird, and grasshopper or frog. Ask yourself, what are the antagonistic muscle pairs involved? The adaptations of the organisms to walk, that's for man, to crawl, that's for earthworm, to hop, grasshopper and frog, to swim, for the fish, and for the birds to fly. Find out the adaptations as they are very interesting. Lastly, you should memorize the different mechanisms of locomotion by the organisms. For example, we have discussed walking and crawling. And hopping, swimming, and flying are the other mechanisms of locomotion. That's all for this lesson. In the next lesson, I will be discussing muscles, tendons, ligaments, cartilage, and joints. And there will be a wonderful acronym that you can use to help remember the points. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for the next video. Goodbye.